On a moonlit Kansas night in 1868, Frank Eaton witnessed the murder of his father by a gang of men called the Regulators. Frank was 8 years old. Mose Bierman, a family neighbor, gave Frank a Navy revolver and challenged the boy to avenge his father's death. As a teenager, Frank found his way to Fort Gibson, Oklahoma. His skill with the gun earned him the nickname Pistol Pete. By 1887, Frank had served as an Indian scout, a deputy U.S. Marshal, and made good on that challenge given him years before by gunning down the men who killed his father. Frank eventually settled in Perkins, Oklahoma, started a family, and became the local blacksmith. Due to his crusty appearance and colorful stories of the Old West, a legend was born. In 1923, the students of Oklahoma A&M adopted the legend as their mascot. Frank became a living symbol of the school. To all who love OSU, he is the original cowboy.
Once you put that big orange hat on and you take on, you kind of assume that caricature or what you think that Western psyche was like. And so that's why you see in each of these Pistol Petes don a different walk.
Pistol Pete didn't just walk down the street. He had bow legs and he sauntered down the street, and that sucker was cocky and he wasn't afraid of anything, and you need to look like that every time you do anything. If you blow your nose, you need to blow your nose like a really cocky, badass cowboy.
I think that Pete's definitely taught me a lot of things about me as a person and like what's important in life, you know, the little things that are important in life and just the connections that are so valuable, and just being honest and transparent with people and just loving people for who they are. I think all that adds up, and that's a lot of what I've learned this year is Pete.
This guy that died in 1958, so almost 10 years before I was born, was a real life cowboy in the Wild West. And that just, to me, that just brings history back. Wait a minute, that's a lot closer to me than I thought it was.
It's historical. I mean, you're part of this history. It's kind of hard to capture in words except to say that you're honored to be able to have represented the school, and I wouldn't have this experience had I not had that experience.
The first moment when I realized, hey, I want to beat Pete was at State FFA convention when I was a state officer, and I actually gave a speech about like telling your story and how it can impact others, and you can relate to others through telling your story and not to like shy away from that, you know. And I told the story of Frank Eaton at that speech in the Cox Center that night of my sophomore year in college, and Pete actually came out with me. So he was like in the intro with me, shot the shotgun off in Cox Convention Center. We didn't ask for permission to do that. We asked for forgiveness after it happened. Scared a lot of people, but I related like Frank Eaton's story to my own story, and then like others telling their story to impact, you know, people that they come in contact with. And that was the moment I realized, hey, I want to beat Pete.
I get the biggest kick out of watching these guys today. I think it's more rewarding to watch Pete now, removed 30 plus years, because they're so darn creative.
Here I am 50 years old, and people still introduce me. You know, they'll say, this is Lance, this is what he does, and oh, when he was in school, he was Pistol Pete.
A guy was actually in really bad health, and they were going to put him in hospice the next weekend. So that next day I drove to Skytook, and I walked into a house, and he was watching TV, turned, his back was towards Pete, and some kids came out of the room after he didn't turn around, and they were like, oh my gosh, Pistol Pete's here, like this is nuts, let's get a picture, that kind of stuff. And he finally turned around, and I mean, he knew somebody had come in, but he was still sitting there for like 2 minutes. Finally turned around when he heard that, and he like smiled right away. You know, I knew it was a hard time for him, and but like a smile came right to his face because he saw Pete, you know. So we went outside, and we took family pictures with the group, and that was really cool. It was also really emotional, like I said earlier. He had made a comment that he'd be watching the games from up above this year, and that really hit me hard, just because, it sometimes, as busy as we are, it's sometimes easy to get caught in the motions of going to appearances and stuff, but appearances like that make me just realize how blessed I am to be able to do what I do. A lot of people see Pete at athletics and, on the field, and it's awesome being on the field and shooting the shotgun off at midfield during a football game in Boone Pickens. Like, that's so fun. But to me, like, the best parts are the one-on-one, experiences with people that, text me or email me and say, like, hey, like, can you come to this children's hospital? Because when I think of that, I think of that first moment I wanted to serve as Pete. It was at events like that when I was like, wow, this is so special. The things that I've learned as Pete, that's all going to make me a better husband and father and grandfather, down the road if I'm blessed enough to see that happen. So it's made a world of difference for sure in my personal life.